Welcome to the next episode of On the Couch. I'm David Pease, a Burnie councillor and also a third generation retailer in Burnie. And with me I have Ian Jones, President of Business Northwest and also a local farmer. Welcome along, Ian.
Thank you very much, David.
So today we'd like to talk a little bit about CBD businesses or the broader business community, and particularly empty shops. And so, Ian, there's a bit of a feeling about the place that some of the shops are a bit unkept, and the question's been asked of council or probably Business Northwest as well. What can we do about it? What's your feeling there?
Yes, I don't think it's as bad as people believe, and in doing my sort of research for this little session, I've been walking around the streets looking up above the level of the awnings and below as well, and most shops seem to be in reasonable repair. There are a couple that I think have elicited a lot of feedback on social media. There's a fair bit of work to be done, and we can probably guess who they are. But one of the issues is that council has no power to go and make somebody redecorate their shop or repaint unless it's a safety or a fire safety issue. So unfortunately, if a landlord does not want to paint their shop or make decorations, we as Business Northwest and you as council really can't do anything about it.
No, and of course there are those couple of prominent sites around Burnie that people see almost in the entrance markers into the CBDs, and that do cause a little bit of grief, I think, because of their condition. Yeah. And while as a council we've managed to contact the owners, but we're still waiting for action. And I think there's a particular one in Upper Burnie that is problematic because it really is in a bad state of disrepair. But I think that's one of those locations that's probably going to have a major development happen. And I think the owner's perhaps thinking, well, why spend some money if something big's going to happen here? So, hopefully in the fullness of time something will occur there.
Yes, well, it's like the building just down on the corner here on Ladbroke and Wilson Street. It's going to be the courthouse building eventually. It probably needs to have a bit of a clean up, but the owner's obviously not going to do anything and hasn't done anything for quite a while because he knew this was going to occur. And quite often, people who buy a commercial property as an investment, they've got a mortgage to pay, and all of a sudden we've had 11 or 12 interest rate rises in the last 12 months. So their mortgage cost has gone up, so they have less money to spend on refurbishment.
It's a bit of a catch-22, isn't it? Because you need your property in good repair to get a tenant in, but then you've also got to have income to be able to spend on it. So, there is a lot that goes in to making that financial decision around when's the right time to spend on a property. Certainly from a council point of view, we'd like to see every shop front painted, and would like to see every shop tenanted, of course. But it really does come down to the owner and the commercial agent, I suppose, to strike a good deal, a good balance.
Yes, and also, the times are a little bit tough at the moment, so we've got a lot less people starting new businesses. So when a shop becomes vacant, it's taking longer than normal to actually rent that shop out. And it's a product of internet shopping as well. And I don't think we're any worse off than other places in Tasmania. And certainly, we both visit Melbourne a lot, and we've often discussed about how Melbourne is, it's not a ghost town, but it's very, very uninhabited in downtown these days. Yeah,
and actually that was probably a point that I was going to make too, that we do hear that there's a lot of empty shops in Burnie. And at times, you've always got a certain churn and turnover, but really we're faring much, much better than a lot of regional areas that I travel to. I remember back, it was just prior to COVID, in Bendigo, there were 72 empty shops in the main block, basically. And at the time in Burnie, we had about 24 or something like that. I think the other thing that's happened in Burnie is in the CBD in the past, we had some big box developments, like we had a big hardware store, and we had, of course, a big mixed store in Harris Scarfell Fitzgerald's prior to that. And of course, that one big site's been divided up into probably 15 little shops, and areas like the post office that were one shop are now 5 shops. So we've actually got more smaller properties available for lease in the town, and propping up those big tenants like we had in the past. But again, that's just a sign of how retail's going generally. And the other thing that I probably would sort of add in a discussion about the CBD areas is, in the past, the CBDs have been seen as a retail footprint, whereas now it's very much changed. It's now a meeting place, really. So you've got your cafes, you've got cafes, restaurants, you've got your entertainment like the cinema, and so I think CBDs the world over are changing, and it takes a little bit of time for that mix to get right, and so you will have some vacancies in the meantime. But I think even now the CBDs are becoming residential areas again,
yes,
which is how they were in the early 1900s. If you looked at how Burnie was, look at those early pictures, it was people living above the shops, and the shops were very mixed in their use. It wasn't all retail, it was a real variety, and I think we're starting to transform back that way, and with the big box developments being on sort of the fringes of the CBD. So I think we're just getting this transition period at the moment. At least that's how I sort of see it.
Yeah, and retail has changed. It's if you go back 100 years ago, you probably had 2 or 3 blacksmiths around town.
Yeah, that's right.
And
yes.
40 or 50 years ago, you had 5 or 6 butchers in town.
Yeah,
whereas
yeah.
now there's probably only 2 or 3 butchers, and they're in the suburbs. And butchery is meat is supplied by the supermarkets, and there's businesses that are no longer relevant, and places like video hire places,
Yeah.
and tourist agents or travel agencies. So many people book online now, but we used to have 4 or 5 travel agencies around the CBD from what I can remember.
Yeah.
Now maybe there's 1. So the nature of retail's changed, and people buy so much more on the internet now. And I noticed in statistics I saw this morning that the number of people employed in retail in Tasmania is less now than it was in 2018.
Gee, that's interesting.
It's gone backwards.
Yeah, and retail used to be the primary, it was the biggest employer
Yes.
of people, so it's interesting that there's a contraction there.
Yeah.
I suppose the other thing that's worth touching on is the work Business Northwest did in filling some of the shops that have been vacant for a while in the plaza, and that Renew Australia sort of program. I think that's probably worth touching on too, because that shows that there is a demand for these sites, and there is a demand for retail, but we've just got to get it right so that the shops are affordable for the people, and the people have the right product for the market.
Yes, 2 or 3 years ago we started a program called Renew Burnie, which is under the Renew Australia brand, and we got in touch with 2 of the one real estate agent and 2 landlords that own most of the 2 arcades in Burnie, and we agreed that we would put social enterprises into those shops, just so the shops were seen to be used, and also to allow those social enterprises to trade and have high profile. And the idea is that if you've got a busy, vibrant and active CBD, especially right at the centre of the CBD, other retailers and businesses will look at that and say, gee, I can picture my business there.
Yeah.
And that's actually what's happened. We've let out 3 or 4 of the shops on a full-time basis now for normal commercial rent, whereas they go in on a peppercorn rent and just paying outgoings. But it adds a lot of vibrancy to the town as people
Absolutely.
walk through that particular the Plaza Arcade. It's a very busy traffic area,
Yeah.
so they see, there's a new dress shop there, there's this shop, there's that shop, and I think it just makes people feel a little bit better that they're not walking past empty shops.
Yeah, and probably the other thing that I'd add at this stage is that there are some big developments happening. We've got a $12 million visitor accommodation happening behind the cinema building. There have been a couple of long-term retail properties in Burnie that retail tenants that have closed shop nationwide, but it looks already as if people are going into those sites. So there is a good turnover at the moment, and there are people looking to come into the city, which is just really good news. But I'm very confident that there'll still be they will have a really strong CBD, and of course Councillor is working on their urban renewal for the CBD, and I think that will give us some real direction moving forward. So I think it's quite exciting.
Yeah, and we're coming into a period where it's a bit uncertain. We've come out of COVID, we recovered from COVID, and now we've got we're going through this interesting period where interest rates are going up, and which way is inflation going, and we've just had the latest federal budget. So I think long term everything will work itself out in Burnie. I think there's a lot of positive economic drivers, but we all just have to be patient and get out of this bit of a downturn we're going through at the moment, because with all of these industries coming to Burnie, it's going to have a huge financial return in the long term.
And I think that's exactly how I see from a council point of view as well as a retail viewpoint, that we're doing some really heavy lifting at the moment, in preparing things and getting things ready, and we won't see the reward for a little bit yet, but I really feel we're heading in the right direction in so many areas that Burnie's got a really prosperous time ahead of it. So thanks for joining me for this session of On the Couch, Ian. I hope that the people watching have gained a good understanding of where we see the city moving forward, and that things are pretty prosperous. We're looking for some good times ahead.